one of the most boring things you can do as a character in a movie is like do a line of coke, or shoot heroin, like vomit into a toilet bowl, or wake up in bed and, you know, slam the alarm clock. Hey, it's been a pretty dang chilly, miserable November out here. So I've been staying in a lot, and that meant more reading and watching more stuff. So in this video I'm going to try and catch up on a few movies I saw throughout November, which I thought are worth talking about. There is going to be a documentary on a cult horror filmmaker, there's going to be an Oscar-nominated crime drama from the 70s with lots of authentic street flavor, and I'm going to start with the Ti West movie X. You know, it's been sort of difficult for me keeping track of what I've been watching lately. My memory isn't quite as good as it used to be, quite frankly. Back in the day, I used to have an IMDb account, and I would religiously every day update lists and rate movies. So I had like a log of everything I'd seen for like half a decade at least. But it's been a while since I logged into IMDb. I do not like to waste my time on there anymore unless I have to specifically look up to see, to establish when I'm covering certain movies, I want to establish how obscure they are, to see if they're even listed, you know, for those kind of reference purposes. But I still think like the layout, the current layout of the IMDb is just atrocious. So, and I do not really understand Letterboxd, so I do not have a way of keeping track. I've stopped keeping track of movies I've been watching. So the ones I bring up now, I guess the ones that firmly stuck in my memory, which means in some ways they must be special. So I'm a big supporter of Ti West's movie House of the Devil. I think the first 60 minutes of that movie are really, really fantastic filmmaking, and there is a lot of good stuff in X as well. So I'm happy I checked it out, and I've been both apprehensive and excited about watching it. A friend of mine told me that it's a crap movie, so I was curious, you know, to make up my own mind about it. So I watched it, and I would say there is about 30% of great movie in there, and sandwiched in between like 60% of a very average movie, but none of it is truly terrible. So it's an above average movie. This is like, in a nutshell, what I make of that film. In case you are unfamiliar with X, there is like a bunch of people in a van who are traveling through the southern states, and they are gonna spend like a weekend at this remote farmhouse, and they're gonna like make a sex movie out there. So this is it in a nutshell, and then the killings start. So it's as simple as that. And this premise does not get worked out into anything super detailed. So Ti West does what he does best, is that he milks his simple premise, he stretches out, he like distends and dilutes every scene, and, you know, makes his shots last as long as he can without you know, boring you to death. So he really is good at that, at stretching his limited means to cover, you know, as much ground as he can. So there are shots which are well composed, and you know, the way he holds the shots, it's reminiscent of even, you know, some really good movies actually. So throughout watching X, I kept being reminded, in terms of film language, what a classical filmmaker Ti West actually is. I was surprised, like, it was almost Hitchcockian at times, even though it's not like a suspense movie, but there are certain just very clean, nicely thought out edits and things like that, where I just thought, okay, this guy must have done a bit of film school or film studies. It's just, you could say in a way it's like a literate film. And at the same time, it's obviously an intelligent, literate filmmaker who's tackling deliberately writing about and making a movie about kind of rough characters, you know. So Ti West seems to have a fascination for that sort of, that kind of people, I don't know. That was a curious clash. I do not see, I've never been to Texas or anywhere like that, and somehow I got the feeling that Ty West is also not from those parts. So for him, it was a bit of a fabled fancy land or something. That's the feeling I got from the movie. Another feeling I got from watching X was it was kind of like a blurred memory of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. So there were a certain, I don't want to say shot, but like certain modes in X which were heavily reminiscent of that film, and in the best possible way. So I think Ty West inherited some of the better kinds of approach that Tobe Hooper introduced in his Chainsaw Classic. There are a few kills in X, and that's something which I found a little bit underwhelming. This is not a movie where you would say, okay, it's full of wet gore, like the Terrifier movies where the gore is the reason. It's definitely not the reason. In fact, I'm not even sure. I mean, I consider myself like a Ty West supporter, so this is why I went to this movie. It did not look original, it did not look particularly intriguing, but as I'm already into Ty West, so I watched it. Otherwise, I'm not even sure, because there aren't really super interesting characters or mind-blowing twists in the story, and the gore is pretty average. So it's a good middle-of-the-road movie. I know the great thing about it is that they made the budget really last, and they put things up front, so you really, the movie looks pretty big, and the way it's put together, like the editing and everything, is really smooth. So even though Ty West kind of brings back some of that kind of degenerate and creepy characters from like the backwater town or something into this movie, his filmmaking approach is much more sophisticated and not as rough around the edges as the early movies of Tobe Hooper, which obviously inspired Ty West. There is a sequel now called Pearl, which, to be fair, I mean, I'm not really interested, because the character of Pearl in X was not really interesting, and there was also some terrible dialogue, some offensive dialogue in this movie. So I thought it was, the middle of the movie was pretty good. The middle part is where the things got going a little bit, and there was a bit of intrigue. Once things started sharpening towards the finale, this is where some of the bad jokes started cropping up, and the movie became it started self-destructing a little bit, and some of the air seems to have gone out of it. It was like a bit deflated by the time it was, the final credits rolled. Having said that, I still salute the filmmakers, because I think they did an amazing job. Not a brilliant film, but fantastic. I'll give them like an A for effort, because I think everybody put in like 110% into the film. The reason it doesn't work is it's just, even making a movie like this in today's climate it's a kind of a heroic act in a way, and also because the characters were just not really fleshed out in the story. I mean, you see people like doing lines of coke in it and riding around in vans, and a lot of it is like, I've seen this before. Like, I think one of the most boring things you can do as a character in a movie is like do a line of coke, or shoot heroin, like vomit into a toilet bowl, or wake up in bed and slam the alarm clock. Some of the lamest things, like all early amateur filmmakers in their home movies, this is the kind of things you would probably try and do, and like in X they do a lot of lines of coke, which isn't really relevant to the movie. So yeah, there's been some tiresome stuff in it, but the digital cinematography, the filters they used like in post, it looked nice. So the movie had, for a digitally shot film, quite a pleasing, what's the word, color grade. Prince of the City now. This is from the guy who directed Serpico. And I've been meaning to check out Prince of the City for at least a year. I remember there was a DVD, and I tried watching that, but the transfer, like the master they used for the DVD, was really grotty, so I kind of gave up. To me, like when I think Treat Williams, I think of the movie The Substitute Part 2, I think, or the other one is Deep Rising. So I see him like as somebody from fun movies, but obviously in those days he was somebody like hot and up and coming future star and stuff. So Prince of the City is like an adapted from an acclaimed novel, and the cool thing about this film is there is a lot of location shooting. I think New York City in those, it was like when the city was broke, and it was like a very sleazy, dangerous, horrible place to be, but very cinematic, obviously. So it's a little bit along those lines, like, I don't know, Across 110th Street, or like, even I mentioned already Serpico. There is a whole bunch of films where there was like an early Pacino film, Panic on Needle Park. So all those films, chiefly when I remember them, it's not as much for the story, but the amazing location, the cities seem to be like oozing this weird cool. So there is tons of that in Prince of the City, and just for that alone, the movie is worth checking out. And I've got to be honest with you, I haven't finished watching Prince of the City because it has a downside. It's a really long film. Like, I have a short attention span. I struggle when the movie reaches like a 70-minute mark, unless it's really fast-paced and there is lots of fun stuff going on. I struggle. So for me, when the movie reaches like 90 minutes, I'm like done with it. So I've watched about an hour and a bit of Prince of the City, and I loved it, but the movie runs out of gas way before it hits 60 minutes. So it's obviously a long-winded story, and it's an epic, sprawling film. So my review is basically the first 60 minutes, and I love the performances. I love the whole, like I said, the ambience. I did struggle with multiple characters because it's like a whole Netflix series, like rolled into one feature film. The performances are really strong, and you get all those kind of Italian-American types with names like, Gazzo, Palazzo, all those kind of things. And they all wear those kind of leather jackets and things, like something out of Starsky and Hutch. So there's like, the period ambience is amazing. And it's a big budget movie, but still it's not like glassy. And there was a beautiful rain scene where, I don't know how much money they had, but they were like following a character running through the rain, which it's got to be a fake rain, right? But they must have had so many of those rain machines there so that they could follow this character all across the street, and still there was like this wall of rain. So I don't know, they must have set up like lots and lots of those water pumps, or how they used to do rain in the 70s. So that was impressive, and I've never seen Treat Williams act his socks off with such earnesty. So he was obviously aiming very high with the movie. To tell you a little bit about the story, it's just about this cop who turns on his buddies, basically. So he's ready to sell out to the feds, so sell out his friends to the feds. It's like a Donnie Brasco type thing, I guess. But I didn't quite get, the guy seemed to be happy and prosperous, and he had like loyal friends. I didn't quite get his motivation, to be fair. I did pay attention, but I didn't get what made him turn on his friends. So there is a drama where he's like torn between the sense of, like, I guess, justice and at the same time loyalty. So that didn't quite work for me. I wonder whether that's like inherent problem from the novel, or I don't know. So that kind of mystified me. And there were some slowish parts in the film. I'm sure I'll finish it, but I cannot watch it in one sitting. So Prince of the City, if you've seen it, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. That's a pretty cool one. Hey, thanks for watching this far. Here is just a little preview of what's coming up on my channel pretty soon. These are the kind of movies I'm going to be reviewing. So this is Umberto Lenzi's 1970s classic crime thriller with Thomas Millian. This is Rome Armed to the Teeth, also known as The Tough Ones. And this one here is from Arrow. I keep getting the title wrong. It's this black and white fairy tale horror. I'm excited to watch this one. The title is The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch. So stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button and activate those notifications to get the updates on my latest uploads. Thanks. To call it a documentary would not be quite fair, because there is a lot of staged footage in it of this actor who's meant to represent Fulci, but it's, I don't know. Then they might have as well cast me as Fulci, because the guy looks nothing like Fulci. This is like my big problem with the film, is the actor looks nothing like the man he's supposed to be playing. And had Fulci been around, he would have been, I'm sure he would have been the first one to take the piss out of this production. For that reason alone, why couldn't they cast somebody who resembles Fulci in some way, you know? I think even the eyes were wrong. Sorry to start so negatively, but I've been kind of really keen to watch this, but like right from the get-go with the title like Fulci for Fake, this already like, there is some alarm bells going off for me, because sorry, Orson Welles and Fulci, this is like two separate shelves for me. I love Welles, I love Fulci, but I wouldn't want to market Fulci by bringing up Orson Welles within the same sentence, because that's just not clever. This documentary, it premiered at Venice Film Festival, so obviously it's aiming at giving some highbrow, you know, credibility to Lucio Fulci, who's beloved for movies like Cat in the Brain and Zombie and The Neo Creeper. Inherently, there is a contradiction within this film, so it's definitely worth watching. The length was about right, it was about 90 minutes long, which is bearable, but a good chunk of it was this stage footage of this guy putting on makeup and staring into a mirror and basically kind of just bumming around Rome, and he just seems like he's in a completely different movie. So this was a bit bizarre, you know, it didn't gel very well. Even the scenes like within his own little separate narrative, they just appeared really pointless to me, so I'm not a fan of that approach. They did have good cinematography, good cameras and stuff for these kind of story within the story shots, and there was some ambition with light and stuff, but the way it was also edited in the end was pretty lazy. But it doesn't mean that the movie isn't worth watching, because especially this Blu-ray, I gotta say, there is a whole array of extras which are excellent. These extras, they represent raw and unedited or less edited chunks of interviews, and that's where the gold is for me. Also, there is some rare like 8mm, Super 8mm home movie footage which Fulci apparently shot himself of his daughters. There is interviews with his both daughters. So there is some precious stuff, but there is also really dark stories which crop up about, you know, the family situation and different various kinds of trouble Fulci seemed to be getting into, like from the mid-80s onwards. So it's actually quite a bleak film. I mean, unsurprisingly. The portrait it painted of Fulci, it's interesting. It makes him look even more complex than he probably was. So there is that at the beginning the actor says, I'm going to like unravel the truth. I'm going to like lift off the mask and show you the real Fulci. I'm going to uncover who he is. And there is an attempt at investigation, but it's all, you know, it's all bollocks in the end. So there is the interviews, the way they're edited together in this documentary, they are revealing in some ways, but there is also sort of a clash. It's also interesting who they interviewed. There is like the choice of persons they used for this documentary is very different from what we are used to seeing like on the extras of Fulci movies. So there wasn't the typical, you know, the usual suspects who get interviewed when you get another release of the Beyond. Like, for example, the screenwriter Dardano Sacchetti wasn't part of this documentary. And neither were some other typical people you'd expect to pop up. Who was there and who I found curious was the guy who's behind the Nocturnal magazine in Rome, Davide Pulici, and it was interesting to listen to him because he was like the one person among the talking heads in this documentary. He was not Fulci's collaborator or anything, but he is somebody who's deeply invested in the Fulci lore, somebody who's been, you know, publicizing Fulci in his mag and who's been sort of digging deep into his screenplays and things like that. So his theories and ruminations I found really interesting, and they provide an interesting counterpoint to memories of people who actually knew Fulci, who actually lived and worked side by side with Fulci, and that's the majority of the participants. I was a bit upset that Michele Soavi didn't have a larger segment within the documentary. I think he's not present on the extras, but within the documentary, he gets a fairly limited amount of screen time. And I think Michele Soavi is probably the most interesting living Italian director of his generation right now. And he's been praised by both Fulci and Argento and Joe D'Amato. So that's somebody who's learned from, best of the best and went on to become a great filmmaker in his own right. And I gotta say, Soavi, I've seen a few interviews of his before on different DVDs over the years, not always about Fulci. And he's always found ways to, even if he was referring to the same old movie where we all know the background, like, Gates of Hell, which has kind of been done to death, but Soavi always found a way to kind of present those little anecdotes in an interesting way. So he's clearly a very articulate person, so that was great that he was featured. And obviously Fulci's two daughters were very interesting to listen to. So yeah, I'm a little bit torn when it comes to this movie, F for Fake, Fulci for Fake, sorry, because I do not like the way it kind of whitewashes Fulci into like some kind of Orson Welles of gore, because that's like a completely misguided approach. But I appreciate it for the exclusive interviews they got, and I'm really thankful to Severin for including the uncut, lengthy interview footage and various other delicious extras on that Blu-ray. So I would say the Blu-ray itself is a treasure, especially for the extras. The documentary, I do not see myself returning to in a hurry. And if I do watch it again, I'll probably be skipping through those parts with the actor, kind of representing Fulci, because that was just, somewhere between pretentious and just grotesque for me.